the chemtrail generator.
Oh.
Let's make sure that thing's working. We're gonna check this out.
I gotta.
On 33.6.
Oh, look at that! They're working. They're working. You can see the chemtrails coming out of the entrance here. Look at that.
I'm dying to take a picture.
Oh,
of
that's cool.
My neighbor, you got so I see.
Chemtrail I'm doing a video. Chemtrail generators are on, and yeah, there it is. Look, you can see them. All right, that's awesome. It's working.
Calling on the world's faithful to join the fight to solve the climate crisis. 40 religious leaders gathered at the Vatican on Monday to add their voice to the growing chorus calling for world leaders to take real action to tackle the crisis. The Catholic Pope, Pope Francis, called the meeting but preferred to let others speak.
I call on all young people, regardless of their religion, to be ready to fight against any action that may damage the environment or increase the climate crisis.
The meeting was labeled Faith and Science, and many spoke of the need to fuse our rational and spiritual sides.
Together, faith and science, people of different faith can transform fear in hope, anxiety in confidence, inaction into action.
Others highlighted the responsibility religion confers on humanity.
That the water is the father, the air is the teacher, and earth is our common mother. Just as we don't dishonor our mother, father, and teacher, why would we dishonor these gifts from our Creator?
We must address the unequal economic systems and the human impacts of climate change.
Though they aren't political leaders, the president of the upcoming UN Environmental Conference says they have an important role.
There is a very unique voice that religious leaders have when they talk to other world leaders, the leaders of governments, and that, I think, is what now needs to happen. For that voice from the religious world, from the scientific world, to be amplified, to tell world leaders they have to act to protect our planet and our people.
Throughout his papacy, Pope Francis has supported environmental action. In 2015, he published his second encyclical, Laudato Si', in which he called for swift and bold action to tackle the climate crisis.
Last week, he virtually attended the Youth for Climate conference in Milan, backing the work of 400 young delegates as they drafted proposals for the UN summit. Meanwhile, outside conferences, a growing protest movement is adding its own pressure. A consensus has been building that real action must come out of the Scotland summit. And to that, we now have the support of the world's leading spiritual figures. Adam Rainey, Al Jazeera, Vatican City.
But it's taken this kind of shock treatment to nudge governments into doing something, and slowly we are. We're starting to clean up our atmosphere. We're starting to recycle our rubbish. We're doing something positive about population control. But so far, our efforts have really been just a drop in the ocean. The Club of Rome comprises some 70 men of widely varying backgrounds, but their common concern is that the world problems cannot be solved by individual nations. I spoke with Professor Hugo Tiemann, director of the Battelle Institute Geneva, Dr. Aurelio Pache, founder of the club, and Dr. Alexander King, director of the World Bank and the United Nations OECD. Dr. King, now you're describing the world as a closed system where all these things are interrelated, and yet the government, the control of the system is by individual nation states. Now, how do you convince them to cooperate?
The sovereignty of these nations is no longer as absolute as it was. There's a gradual diminishing, whittling away of sovereignty, little bit by little bit. Especially, of course, in the smaller countries, where it's more obvious. But the bigger countries have to do a good deal of this by agreeing to international arrangements for the law of the seas, or for the limits of fishing, or for control of the wavelengths in radio, and 101 other things. But especially in the technological field, I think this is going to be increasingly so because of developments next year. I was at an important meeting in Washington a couple of weeks ago, and Peterson, the former Secretary of Commerce, was saying the same thing from an economic point of view, that the general world economic situation, the interdependence of countries on their food and fuels and so on, is leading to an interdependence which has seeds of draining away of sovereignty within it. So I don't think one can envisage an idealistic of jumping to a world federalism or anything of that sort. But the building up probably in the next decade in a number of particularly sensitive fields like energy, raw materials, the use of the oceans, space and so on, of a number of what people are tending to call regimes, which will not be ordinary United Nations type of organizations, but semi-management organizations. There'll be a great deal of consent in them.
Dr. Bachet views the European Common Market as an elementary example of the kind of regional cooperative which is going to be necessary. What responsibilities does he see for Australia?
Australia, you are in a splendid position.
What should we do?
You have food, energy, space. You are distant from other centers, so you can, for a longer time, feel rather more independent than interdependent. But things of the world are going so fast that I think that an enlightened leadership in Australia should see down the road that Australia will have to lose some of its on self-decisions in order to acquire something else which may be purely political in very wide sense, or maybe also security.
The Club of Rome is reluctant to point the finger at any one nation. Yet clearly nations like the United States, which consumes approximately 60% of the world's resources, will in the Club's view have to accept a severe cutback in its voracious appetite. But the Club's utterances are cloaked in a velvet democracy, in the hope that their facts will gently persuade.
We will ask who is making the decision, and whether the decision makers of today, whether they perceive the problems, what kind of problems, and the interactions of the problems. That's a very pragmatic approach.
Has the time come, Dr. King, when we're going to have to say we can no longer entrust our resources and the exploitation of those resources to private enterprise? Has the time come when governments will simply have to take more control?
Simple nationalization and things like that wouldn't help at all, because we've got to keep an incentive approach. And many of the good aspects of private enterprise are very necessary here, but not in the old exploitative way where the market forces dominated the whole situation.
Dr. Bachet, can you tell me what my lifestyle will be in 100 years' time? What sort of car I'll drive, what sort of house I'll live in, what sort of food I'll be eating?
Probably you will have a smaller car. You will use more common transport means. You will work many far less hours. You will have a wider cultural possibilities that today you will not be so much pressed by immediate needs, because through technology, organization of the markets, the basic needs will be taken care of. And I think that you will love nature and continue then what I think you are doing now to protect our environment, to avoid this man-made world where the creatures of nature, the animals, the plants, the green spaces, the wildernesses are bound to disappear.
To the Club of Rome, the status symbols of the year 2000 will be the inverse of today's. Prestige will stem from low consumption. That personal consumption will have to be less is plain enough, but for that privation to be seen as prestigious would seem to indicate some radical rethinking, at least for the fat cat.
Basically, chemtrails is a geoengineering program where airplanes fly at high altitudes and they spray chemicals into the atmosphere, including aluminum, barium, and strontium. And then those metals fall to the ground and they land in our bodies, on the soil, in our trees, in our food, and in our water. Many people confuse chemtrails with the normal jet contrails. The difference is that the normal jet contrails actually dissipate within minutes, while the heavy metals in the chemtrails cause those trails to persist for hours. And it's not a hypothetical thing. There are 32 states that already have legislation that's related to weather modification. The U.S. agencies that are documented to be involved in it include the U.S. Air Force, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
Another example is the array of technologies, often referred to collectively as geoengineering, that potentially could help reverse the warming effects of global climate change. One that has gained my personal attention is stratospheric aerosol injection, or SAI, a method of seeding the stratosphere with particles that can help reflect the sun's heat in much the same way that volcanic eruptions do. An SAI program could limit global temperature increases, reducing some risks associated with higher temperatures and providing the world economy additional time to transition from fossil fuels. This process is also relatively inexpensive. The National Research Council estimates that a fully deployed SAI program would cost about $10 billion yearly. As promising as it may be, moving forward on SAI would also raise a number of challenges for our government and for the international community. On the technical side, greenhouse gas emission reductions would still have to accompany SAI to address other climate change effects, such as ocean acidification, because SAI alone would not remove greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. On the geopolitical side, the technology's potential to alter weather patterns and benefit certain regions of the world at the expense of other regions could trigger sharp opposition by some nations. Others might seize on SAI's benefits and back away from their commitment to carbon dioxide reductions. And as with other breakthrough technologies, global norms and standards are lacking to guide the deployment and implementation of SAI and other geoengineering.
You have water vapor and you have dust particles or ice crystals. You can precipitate rain. It condenses around the seeds. These seeds can also be created by laser beams. By firing trillion-watt lasers, you rip apart the electrons, creating what are called ions, and these ions act like seeds, like dust particles, bringing down rain and even lightning. Go ahead.
Well, this fascinates me in part because, too, I remember reading the stories that China had used this during the Olympics, that the USSR had used this after Chernobyl to create rain clouds. I mean, did those really work then? We have some of these capabilities now?
Inconclusive. Even in the 60s, the CIA used this to bring down monsoons during the Vietnam War.
We have some of these capabilities now?
Inconclusive. Even in the 60s, the CIA used this to bring down monsoons during the Vietnam War, to wash out the Viet Cong, to wash out the Viet Cong.
Lockheed Martin produces systems that do everything from detect the threats, to identify the threats, determine whether it's a threat to the aircraft, and then employs the appropriate weapon, in this case, a laser weapon system.
What we're hearing from our customers is that they need a layered, multi-domain defensive approach that can be integrated across platforms to neutralize these threats across all those domains. Imagine an aircraft equipped with a laser system with the capability to be able to neutralize a threat at the speed of a lightning strike, the precision of a surgical scalpel, with the magazine to deal with a swarm, and with the scalable effect to be able to address that threat, providing an effect all the way the one end from simply deterring it for a short period of time, all the way up to completely neutralizing and defeating that threat.
We were able to integrate our laser weapon system, Athena, into the classified C2 network and receive cues from the radar on the range in order to execute the full kill chain.
The Helios laser weapon system builds on 40 years of combat system engineering and radar excellence. That is a fundamental change for laser weapon systems, which here to date have been prototypes added to a ship. Helios will be integrated into the ship.
So what's exciting about this technology is that it's scalable. It's lived in the laboratory for many years, but has finally reached the power levels and the effectiveness to allow it to be used on the battlefield. As an example, today's laser weapon systems can be used to defeat rockets, artillery, mortars, and even small UAVs. And as that technology and capability scales, the effectiveness scales with it. We'll be to the point here shortly where we'll be able to defend aircraft against incoming missiles and even reach out over long distances and destroy ballistic missile threats.
Laser weapon systems are earning their way onto the battlefield. Lockheed Martin advancements in the fundamental subsystems, be it beam control, high energy laser, beam direction, power and thermal, is bringing a system-of-system approach to our customers' most challenging problem. Lockheed Martin can bring that end-to-end capability into the theater for the life of our platforms and help defend the brave women and men who boldly go in harm's way to defend our freedoms.
UK Dragonfire is an MOD and DSTL and UK industry programme to demonstrate the capability of a laser-directed energy weapon system for the self-protection of land, maritime and air platforms. It's funded by innovation funding and is at the leading edge, not just of technology, but in demonstrating the end-to-end capability and inform the UK's future procurement decisions in this area.
Dreams in which of dying are the best I've ever
it hard to tell you, and I find it hard to take. People run in circles, it's a very, very mad world. Mad world. Children waiting for the day they feel good. Happy birthday, happy birthday. To feel the way that every child should. Sit and listen, sit and listen. Went to school and I was very nervous. No one knew me, no one knew me. And the teacher tell me, what's my lesson? Look right through me, look right through me. And I find it kind of funny, and I find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. I find it hard to tell you, and I find it hard to take. When people run in circles, it's a very, very mad world.
You have nothing left but your death. Little to your left.
the name of the Lord, they will surely trust in Him. For the Lord never will forsake the one who is honestly, oh Lord, and seeking Him. Everybody on, seek Jesus in the morning, seek Jesus in the noonday hour, seek Jesus in the evening before the sun is going down. He said, "Knock, and it shall be given to you. Seek and ye shall find. Knock and the door will be open to you, and He will come on in and talk to you a while." This is, without faith it is impossible to please the Lord. We must first believe that He exists and He rewards every one of us. Those who know the name of the Lord, they will surely trust in Him. For the Lord never will forsake the one who is honestly seeking Him. Hallelujah. Everybody ought to seek Jesus in the morning, seek Jesus in the noonday hour, seek Jesus in the evening before the sun is going down. He said, "Knock, and it shall be given to you. Seek and ye shall find. Knock and the door will be open to you, and He will come on in and talk with you a while." Everybody on, seek Jesus in the morning, seek Jesus in the noonday hour, seek Jesus in the evening before the sun is going down. He said, "Knock, and it shall be given to you. Seek and ye shall find. Knock and the door will be open to you, and He will come on in and talk with you a while." Hallelujah. Yes, He will. He'll come in. He'll come in. If you're seeking, He'll come in. If you're seeking, He'll come in. Bless your name, Jesus. Bless your name, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord.